A druid spellsword. It's not a particularly easy concept to pull off effectively in D&D. No, I'm not talking about moon druids. That doesn't quite fit the Gish archetype that I'm craving. But good news. Thanks to some really nice changes to 5.5 from 5e, and with a little help from multiclassing, the right feat, and some new spells, I think today we can build a super effective druid spellsword that is almost all druid. In fact, this is underselling it. The build today might be the most powerful Gish I have ever built, period. Let's break it down. Welcome to D4. Hey everybody, so here at D4, I like to do character builds for my favorite role-playing games. I like to crunch numbers about them, I like to theorycraft about them, not so that I can tell you the right or the best way to play a character, but to explore one potential way to build something in the hopes of creating a character that is both powerful but also fun to play. So if you also enjoy creating characters for your favorite role-playing games, or if you are just interested in theory crafting, or if you're looking for tips or ideas on how to build something that you're thinking about playing, then welcome home. This is where you belong, and I'm so glad you're here. So thank you for watching. My name's Colby. And yeah, I'm not in my regular abode. As I mentioned last time, I'm on a little bit of a vacation with my family, but I am still going to be doing character builds just kind of every other week for a minute. We'll get back to the regular schedule before too long. And also, I've got a really nasty cold that I'm fighting right now, so hopefully that doesn't impact the tonal quality or my ability to actually speak after doing this for the next hour. Right, so I have only attempted a druid Gish once on this channel, the Wildfire Druid, right up there. I think it worked pretty effectively, but yeah, it's not super easy to do, since no druid subclasses get extra attack, and that's pretty paramount to being an effective melee combatant, right? But the subclass that I think can pull it off better than any other, yeah, the Spores Druid. They get both a little extra damage to attacks, which is nice, and a hefty survivability bump that can help them stay in melee. Historically though, there was a big challenge to building a decent Spores Druid Gish. The extra damage that they get to every hit is great, but it only works if the temporary hit points granted by the same feature are active. But those temporary hit points only scale with more Druid levels, and so on the one hand, to really get a lot of mileage out of that extra damage per hit, you want to multi-class in order to pick up extra attack, right? But on the other hand, if you're taking 5 whole levels in another class to get extra attack, then you're not scaling your temporary hit points, and so, you know, you're level 8, and you're like a Druid 3 and a Ranger 5 or whatever, well, you're hitting pretty hard, but you only have 12 temporary hit points, and at that level, your temporary hit points are probably gone after a single hit from an enemy. So it's like, that extra damage per hit wasn't actually doing much for you in practice, whether because you didn't have enough temporary hit points to keep the damage going, or you weren't making enough attacks for the extra damage to actually be worth much, right? But then we got 5.5, and with it, weapon masteries, and an improved, in my mind, dual wielder feat, as well as some buffs to druid damage, and the ability to regain wild shape uses, and some new really potent spells, not just conjure minor elementals. There are a few good ones that a spellsword would love to use, and all of a sudden, a Spores Druid Gish becomes super viable with just a teeny weeny multi-class dip. So yes, this is the one rule that I'm giving myself for the build today. No extra attack. No multi-classing beyond the bare minimum so that we can keep scaling those temporary hit points that are so invaluable to not only keep our extra damage alive, but also to keep us alive if we really want to be in melee, mixing it up with our blades all the time. Okay, you ready to build it with me? I proudly present D&D Build number 261, the Druid Gish, the Gish Room, the Sporadic Spellsword, the Deathcap Duelist, Bloodspore, the Shiitake Scimitar, the Myconid Marauder, the Truffle Scuffler, the War Shroom, in Faerun, Mushroom chops you, Smooth Criminy, the Wicked Gish of the Yeast. So many good ones. As always, thank you, Discord, for the suggestions. Fantastic this week. Yeah, I think I gotta give it to Fearless Elbow again, who came up with the Spellspored. Wow, that's so good. Huge thanks to my good friend Randall Hampton for the fantastic artwork that he put together for the build this week. He does this every week. If you'd be interested in following him to check out the other stuff that he's created, or to commission him to create some art for your character or even your entire party, I will, as always, put links in the video description on how to do so. But first, welcome back to my room. So, you know what my favorite thing about today's sponsor, Helix, is right now? How cool I stay on their mattresses. It's July, the hottest month of the year where I live, and this July, I'm not waking up in the middle of the night sweating all the time. I love this mattress. It's the best mattress I've ever owned, not only because it helps me stay cool at night, even during the hot summer months. And the thing is, my Helix mattress is specially tailored for me, and yours would be tailored for you, because with Helix, before you order, you take a sleep quiz to help you figure out your body type and sleep preferences so that you can get the perfect mattress for you. I am a side sleeper, and I tend to prefer a softer mattress. Like I've said, I tend to sleep hot, so I took the test before I ordered this, and I got matched up with what is a Sunset Luxe mattress with a Glaciotex cooling cover. But there are 20 unique mattresses that they offer, including the Luxe and Ultra Premium Elite collections, the Helix Plus for big and tall builds, and even Helix Kids. And they have these great mattress toppers now too. We've got one in our guest room downstairs, and I can't get my kids to just sleep in their own freaking bedrooms right now because they always want to sleep on it instead. They also have new Comfort Adjust cooling pillows that you can customize to be the exact right firmness and height that you like to give you the perfect amount of support that you need. I love mine. So right now, they're having a 4th of July sale. They're giving you 20% off of everything on their site. Such a great deal. So click on the URL that I've put in the video description and the pinned comment if you're interested to enjoy those savings, and let them know I sent you, if you would. Thank you. Their mattresses have a limited lifetime warranty, and they have a 120-night sleep trial. So you've got 4 months to test it out and see if you like it. But if you don't, which frankly I have a hard time imagining, but still, send it back, you get a full refund. And they even have financing options and flexible payment plans. So there's really nothing to lose here, guys, but so much to gain. Oh, and shipping is free in the US. It comes rolled up in a box. It's super easy to set up. So no more delays. And just check out what you've been missing with Helix. Okay, let's get back to the build. All right. At level 1, for our starting class, we are starting fighter. Of course we are. Of course you don't have to, but this is a big part of what makes Spores Druids so much better now in 5.5. We want weapon masteries, we want a fighting style, and we want Constitution saving throw proficiency to help protect our concentration, right? We get all 3 of those things by just starting with a single level of fighter. And sure, we'd love to have action surge, maybe later. Now, some of you may be thinking, we could get all of those things that we want with feats, right? And you'd be right, so long as you were willing to wait until level 12 to have all of them. Go ahead and skip Fighter 1, I guess. Too bad there are other feats that we would really love to have too that we wouldn't get to until like character level 19. So, I mean, I guess if you're playing a level 20 one-shot, sure, skip Fighter, go straight through it. Now, others of you are thinking, we could get most of the benefits by going 2 levels of Ranger, and that way we wouldn't slow down our spell slot progression as much. That's true. If you'd rather go Ranger instead, you should. Waiting until Ranger 2, though, to get the fighting style really hurts, I think. No Constitution saving throw proficiency and no action surge also hurts, but maybe you think it's better going that route for the spell slots, or maybe just because it feels better for you conceptually and thematically, and or there are Ranger spells and features that you really like. I'm starting fighter. You do what you gotta do. For the species today, I think I'd probably go elf here for a few reasons actually, but it's by no means necessary. I think especially for a character focused on the dark and deep places of the world, a Shadar Kai or Drow feel particularly great here thematically, and Shadar Kai is especially powerful. A bonus action teleport, proficiency bonus times per day, that also gives you resistance to all damage for a round will really help those temporary hit points last longer if you can time that teleport right, right before you take some damage. If you want to go with a different species, go for it. It's not going to be a huge impact on our damage numbers, especially for the first, 8 levels or so. And after that, it'll be a bump, but mostly to harder to hit enemies, right? But only a minor one, except for against the very hardest to hit enemies. As for our background, as always, I say take an old one and customize it, or just make a custom one if you can, but if not, Wayfarer or Mulhorandi Tomb Raider will work great depending on which ability scores you want to increase, because yes, they both give my favorite origin feat, Lucky, which we're taking as often, right? But also, as always, not necessary, but advantage proficiency bonus times per day on any d20 roll can help us out a lot with damage. As for our abilities, I assume we go the point by method as always and say let's take a 15 dexterity and a +2 there, and then a 15 wisdom and a +1, and then a 14 con. Or alternatively, you could go like with a starting 16 con and 14 wisdom, right? If I've got an eye on damage, we'll get just a little bit more mileage out of a better wisdom score, not to mention our healing and other druid features, right? But favoring constitution here is fine. Better saves, better concentration, more hit points, always good to have. As for our starting equipment, I'm gonna say let's grab a short sword, a scimitar, and then either scale mail or studded leather, depending on whether you feel like you need to be stealthy. But yeah, weapon-wise, we're going with my new favorite setup for dual wielders, because when you get extra damage per attack, more attacks is better than fewer attacks, right? Genius. And yes, two-weapon fighting is better than ever now, thanks in large part to weapon masteries, like we talked about, right? And we get these at Fighter 1, and so we're going to want to make sure we master the short sword for the Vex Mastery, which says that when we hit with the weapon, then our next attack against that enemy made before the end of our next turn is made with advantage. That's nice. And then the scimitar for our best friend Nick, which says that when we dual wield 2 light weapons, we can make that additional attack from doing so as part of the attack action, right? Rather than having to use our bonus action for that sort of offhand attack. Yay. And yes, these are the weapons of choice for us with the setup because they're both light and have the finesse property, which we need as a dexterity-based attacker, yeah? Now, I should mention, you could totally go for a strength-based setup here if you wanted. Wear heavy armor and enjoy an even better armor class, sure. I just prefer dexterity because dexterity is generally a more important saving throw and will help our initiative, but either route is fine, honestly. Neither is going to impact our damage. We also get a fighting style at Fighter 1, right? And of course we're going to go with the two-weapon fighting style so that all of our attacks made when dual wielding get to add our dexterity modifier or strength to the damage. Finally, at Fighter 1, we get Second Wind, which says that we can heal ourselves for a d10 plus our fighter level with a bonus action 2 times per day, recovering 1 use on a short rest. You know who I'd like to take a short rest with? my channel members and patrons. Let me give them a quick shout out if you don't mind. You guys, thank you so much for your support. It means everything to me. I could not do this for a living without your support, and I'm so grateful, so thanks. If you're not a member or a patron, I'd love it if you consider becoming one. Check the video description for links that tells you about the perks that I offer. And if you can't or don't want to, that's okay. I'm glad you're here watching, liking, subscribing. Those are great ways to support too, so thank you. But at level 2, with most of our most important features from Fighter achieved, yeah, it's time to go Druid for a while, meaning that we would be a Druid 1 here, and as such, we get Druidic, first of all, that special language that Druids can use to leave messages for each other with twigs and leaves in the forest, and then we get our Primal Order. We should take Magician, of course, since we've already got all the armor and weapon proficiencies we need from Fighter. Magician gives us an extra Druid cantrip, that's nice, and then lets us add our Wisdom modifier to our Arcana or Nature checks. I love utility. Speaking of cantrips, we get Druid spells here, of course, and I would be sure to grab Guidance for a nice D4, 2 ability checks for you and your friends. I like Poison Spray for a pretty hard-hitting ranged cantrip. Thorn Whip is a lot of fun to yoink enemies closer to you if need be. Absorb Elements is great to have if you need resistance to elemental damage. Cure Wounds, Healing Word, and or Goodberry are all great for healing. Entangle is a nice potential multi-target control. And Fairy Fire is a nice way to try and get advantage on attacks against potentially multiple enemies for your whole party. Lots of good ones to choose from. At level 3, we would be a Druid 2, and that means we get Wild Shape, which lets us twice per day and recovering 1 use on a short rest, transform into a beast of 1/4 challenge rating or lower for now for a couple of hours. Lots of rules around this that we are not going to get into because we are planning on burning those wild shape uses for other things, of course, but it's still a really fantastic feature that just makes for great infiltration and utility, especially once we can transform into flying beasts at Druid level 8. We also get Wild Companion here, which lets us summon a little fey beast as per the Find Familiar spell, with either a use of Wild Shape or by burning a spell slot, which I love. And frankly, it feels really fitting for druids to have easy access to pets, right? So, hooray. Familiars can be great for scouting themselves, or for delivering a touch spell in our behalf, or sure, for taking the help action to grant advantage on an attack against an enemy. At level 4, we would be a Druid 3, and that means we get our Druid subclass, and we are going Spores, as we've said. Those most myconic of druids. Is that a word? So, Spores druids get 2 features at this level. Halo of Spores says that when a creature moves within 10 feet of us or starts their turn there, we can use our reaction to force a Constitution save, or they take 1d4 of necrotic damage. No half damage on a save. And you know, I make fun of this ability a lot, but hey, actually, yeah, it's pretty bad. It's not the low damage. It's not even the con save. It's the low damage and con save that costs our reaction. It's just so rarely worth using, I think, since we might need that reaction for something else, right? When I crunch numbers, am I going to add this to our DPR? Of course I will. But it's probably not really worth using most of the time unless we feel super confident that we will not need our reaction for anything else. And then there's the darling feature of the subclass, Symbiotic Entity. This says that we can use an action and a use of our wild shape to give ourselves 4 temporary hit points per druid level for 10 minutes, and in that time, so long as we've got at least one of those temporary hit points left, our Halo of Spores deals 2d4 damage. Whew. And more importantly, we can add a d6 of necrotic damage to all of our melee weapon attacks. Let's go. Now, one note. Having to use an action for this can be a bit of a burden. The 10-minute timer is nice. I wish it were longer, but yeah, I will assume that when combat starts, we've got it going. If you play at a table where you find that it's tough to regularly get it going before combat starts, I'd encourage you to take that second level of fighter as soon as possible for Action Surge so we can start it up, Action Surge, and still make our attacks on round 1. Yeah. We also get second level druid spells here, and Spores druids get Chill Touch, Blindness, Deafness, and Gentle Repose for free. But beyond that, I would want to grab Aid to heal and raise the maximum hit points for 3 party members. Bark Skin is worth considering at early levels since it will raise your AC to 17, assuming that you can't afford half plate yet, I guess. Heat Metal is nice single target sustained damage if that enemy is wearing some metal armor, right? Hold Person is fantastic for paralysis against humanoids. Lesser Restoration is great to cure some nasty conditions. Pass Without Trace is amazing full party stealth buff if you need it. Summon Beast would be my go-to for concentration at early levels, I think, for yet another pet that makes a pretty solid attack. But let me pause for a moment and talk about 2 potentially really problematic second level druid spells that I wish were not problematic for this Druid Gish build that we're doing today. The first one is a new spell that I have not discussed before, Tortoise Shell. It's pretty sweet. It's an action to cast and requires concentration, but then it raises your or your friend's armor class by 3 for 1 minute if you don't move. But if you do move, then your AC still goes up, only just by 1 until the start of your next turn. That's kind of cool and fun and unique. And potentially powerful, especially if you feel really confident that you're not going to be going anywhere for a bit. What makes it problematic? It's part of the new D&D Beyond drops, which have a lot of people nervous about a subscription-based model for D&D going forward. If you are someone who is not like boycotting D&D drops for whatever reason, I'd consider using it to help you hold on to your temporary hit points a lot more easily, if for no other reason. The spell that really chaps my hide though, Flame Blade. Man, wouldn't it be awesome if Flame Blade were good? I want to use this spell in a build so bad, and I have for years. I get requests for it all the time. But as it is, it just sucks. It doesn't technically count as a weapon, requires taking a magic action to use it, and then just does 3d6 plus your spell modifier in damage on a hit. I mean, I guess for single target damage, it's better than a downy pillow, but ugh. Dear DMs, homebrew this spell for your druid gishes so that it works like Shadowblade, yeah? let it count as a weapon with the light and finesse properties. It's made out of flame, after all, allowing you then to make weapon attacks and benefit from taking the attack action, so we could use this and get all of the other things that we want to get from taking the attack action. Heck, even give it a weapon mastery like Vex or Sap. Then we would have a really cool spell we could work with. Oh, and while you're at it, make it so that the spell costs 1 silver piece to summon so that we can get around all that silly, can I use this with True Strike or Booming Blade? Nonsense. Thanks. Alright, at level 5, we would be a Druid 4, and that means we get our first general feat, and as a Gish who wants to make as many attacks as possible without needing the extra attack feature, yes, we are taking Dual Wielder here, of course, since it says that when we take the attack action and attack with a light weapon, check, we can make an extra attack with our bonus action with a different melee weapon that doesn't have the two-handed property. And since our bonus action is free, thanks to Nick, right? Yes, that means rules as written, we can make what would be a third weapon attack on our turn now, which, I mean, hey, that's as good as most dual wielders could do even with extra attack back in the old 5e days, so it feels pretty dang good to me. And I mean, if you want to argue that you can't use the dual wielder feat and a Nick weapon to get 3 attacks like this, you are welcome to do so in the comment section, but I think you're wrong. and so did Jeremy Crawford, back before he left Wizards of the Coast. Ooh, evoking the JC. Anyways, at level 6, we would be a Druid 5, and that means we get Wild Resurgence, which lets us once on every single turn, if need be, spend a spell slot to get a use of Wild Shape back, no action required. Dang, that feels generous. If only it didn't require our action to use Symbiotic Entity. That would probably be overpowered, I suppose. Man, I really wish it were only a bonus action. Oh well, I'm greedy. Anyways, we can also burn a Wild Shape use to get a first level spell slot if need be, but only once per day. And then we get the wonderful, fabulous 3rd level spells. Spores Druids get Animate, Dead, and Gaseous Form for free, which could be useful, but beyond that, there are a ton that I would love to have. Aura of Vitality for one of the best and most efficient healing spells in-game. Dispel Magic is always good. Erupting Earth is decent AoE damage, especially since the damage for it scales so well. Plant Growth can be a great way to slow big groups of enemies to almost a crawl. Revivify is a must-have if your DM isn't afraid to kill off PCs. Sulune's Viper might be the best single target control spell in-game right now. Had a lot of fun building around that right up here if you missed that control build. But the most important spells for us for damage, I think, are Summon Fae and Conjure Animals. Summon Fae gets us a fantastic, adorable little pixie that hits pretty dang hard and can teleport and do other cool stuff depending on their mood, which you decide, right? Conjure Animals is probably the better damage option though these days for concentration. It conjures a large pack of spirit animals that can be moved when you move, and when they move within 5 feet of an enemy or the enemy moves within 5 feet of the pack or ends their turn there, then the pack attacks, dealing 3d10 on a failed dexterity save once per turn. Which spell you use all depends on how many enemies there are, what their AC is, what their dexterity save is like. If we assume a 50% chance to save, then this spell would do a little less single target damage than Summon Fae on average, considering like an enemy armor class of 10 to 20. But Conjure Animals can and probably will affect multiple enemies per round, right? I think that since I'm focused on single target damage, and since Summon Fae lasts an hour compared to Conjure Animals 10 minutes, I'm going to go ahead and assume that we're using Summon Fae when I crunch numbers, but obviously Conjure Animals will be better a lot of the time if you can get it going before the fight starts, right? Speaking of which, at level 6, it is time for our first damage report. Alright, so let's talk about what combat would ideally look like for us at this level, yeah? I'm going to assume when the fight starts that you've got Summon Fae and Symbiotic Entity active. Again, that might be a stretch, but with one lasting an hour and one lasting for 10 minutes, it's not too crazy a stretch, I don't think. Feel free to get Action Surge by this point if need be. Right on round 1, then, we'd simply run up to our chosen target and start whacking. I think most of us would be able to get advantage from our familiar on that first attack, but if not, we can use a luck point. Anyways, we attack with our short sword first. If we hit, we activate Vex, right, giving us advantage on our second Nick attack with the scimitar. And then we would make our final attack with our bonus action using a luck point for advantage there if need be. Each attack would deal 1d6 from our weapon, 1d6 from symbiotic entity, plus 4 from our dexterity. We'd have our Fae, who we summoned as Fuming, I assume, teleport and make an attack with advantage as well, and then, sure, with our reaction, when that enemy starts their turn, we force a Constitution save to try and get 2d4 more damage. Altogether, that would be 8d6 plus 2d4 plus 18 damage per round, potentially. It's not bad. Calculated for armor class and assuming a 50% save chance against Halo of Spores, against enemies with a 10 armor class, we would do 51 damage per round on average. And versus a 15 AC, it would be 45 DPR. And dang, we broke 50 on a Druid Gish without extra attack at level 6. Against easy to hit targets, at least. And I mean, sure, we are blowing all of our luck points here, and assuming a helpful familiar who never dies, and a summoned Fae who never dies. We're making assumptions, we always do, but those are better numbers than I was expecting, if I'm being honest, when I first started putting this build together. Landing us solidly near the upper end of tier 1 compared to all other damage dealers that I've built to date at this level. Go melee mushroom, go! Now, sure, we're also assuming that we're holding on to those temporary hit points, which of course is no guarantee. But I mean, we've got 20 of them at this level and a decent AC. Maybe consider going Magic Initiate Wizard instead of Lucky as an origin feat to pick up the shield spell, right? Or yeah, go Strength Base to be just a little bit harder to hit and have plate armor by now, hopefully. You know, we also could ideally be getting some nice survivability out of our Shatter Kai, you know, bonus action teleport / damage resistance. And I mean, worst case scenario, if we run out of temporary hit points, we can burn a second wild shape use to bring symbiotic entity back if we lose it, or a spell slot for that matter. It would cost our action to get it going again, but still, we hit hard, we're very tanky, and we're freaking almost all druid here, people, with heals and utility up the wazoo, and even some control potential. I love it. Let's keep going. At level 7, we would be a Druid 6, and as a Spores Druid, that means we get Fungal Infestation. This lets us summon a zombie with 1 hit point with our reaction when a small or medium beast or humanoid dies within 10 feet of us. Ugh. I mean, yeah, I get annoyed by these kinds of features, I'm sorry. It seems like 5e especially had a lot of them, doesn't it? Summon a fairly unimpressive thing once in a while, but with lots of like stipulations around it. It's just a 1 hit point zombie. Sure, it might not die when it gets hit, but it might. Super low damage, only lasts an hour. The creature that dies has to have been within 10 feet. 10 feet? Ugh. And they have to be medium or smaller. I'm not even going to assume that we've got this up when I crunch numbers going forward. I would almost rather use Halo of Spores with my reaction, even if a small or medium creature did die within 10 feet of me. Almost. Ooh, speaking of the damage from Halo of Spores, it goes up to 1d6 or 2d6 at this level if we've got Symbiotic Entity going, yeah? Also, we do get a 3rd use of Wild Shape per day at this level, which will be nice if we're burning through those temporary hit points especially. Alright, at level 8, we would be a Druid 7, and that means we get, Elemental Fury. This is new for 5.5. It lets us choose a buff for ourselves. We can add our Wisdom modifier to our damage from Druid cantrips, or deal an extra d8 of damage once per turn to our weapon or beast form attacks. Yeah, we'll do that. Especially since we get to choose an elemental damage type when we hit, which is kind of cool for resistances and vulnerability purposes. And for trolls. And then we get 4th level spells here. Spores Druids get Blight and Confusion for free. A couple of pretty decent ones there. But beyond that, while sure, Fire Shield and Polymorph and Wall of Fire and more are all great, the 2 that we've got to talk about are Conjure Woodland Beings and, of course, the infamous Conjure Minor Elementals. Let's do the less problematic one first. Conjure Minor Elementals. Haha, psych! Conjure Woodland Beings. This is basically now Spirit Guardians for Druids, right? It hits a little harder, 5d8 at this level, with a smaller emanation, only 10 feet from us, but a better damage type generally, force damage, and it lets us disengage as a bonus action while the spell is active. It's really great, and especially if you're fighting a lot of enemies, just running around and damaging all of them is super easy, and it's nice damage against your target as well. On the other hand, Conjure Minor Elementals exists. It's an action to cast. It requires concentration. It deals 2d8 cold, fire, lightning, or acid damage per hit. Makes the area difficult terrain for enemies within 15 feet. And perhaps most controversial of all, scales by 1d8 per level that you upcast it. I'm not going to go on and on too much about the pros and cons of the spell here. I've done that a lot, right? But in case you're new here, yeah, it's a lot of damage, but look, it's not crazy, all things considered, at least not yet. As a 4th level spell, and I would argue even as a 5th level spell, it's really good, but it's only 1d8 more than that old spell Spirit Shroud that I used to use all the time, right, at those levels, at 4th and 5th levels. Now, that's not nothing, but considering that it's an action to cast rather than Spirit Shroud's bonus action, it means that unless you've multi-classed and are burning resources for it, you're probably not dealing any damage on the round that you cast it, right? Meaning that, depending on the length of the fight, a spell like Spirit Shroud could outperform it. And so, yeah, for those reasons, I just don't consider it to be particularly problematic. Maybe not until we can upcast it to do kind of crazy per hit damage, yeah? Anyways, let's move on. At level 9, now that we've got Conjure Minor Elementals, we gotta go Fighter 2 so that we can get Action Surge. Assuming you haven't already, right? Because, yeah, Action Surge is so hard to overestimate the value of getting to take 2 actions on your turn once per short rest, which this allows. This means we could, right on round 1, cast Conjure Minor Elementals, Action Surge, and still make our 3 attacks, and that's just really strong, especially for those of us who tend to get a short rest after most fights. But this brings us to our next damage report. Since last check, well, we would be potentially concentrating on Conjure Minor Elementals now, getting it going right on round 1 thanks to Action Surge, though don't sleep on Conjure Woodland Beings. It will almost surely do more total damage on your turn if you're fighting multiple enemies, right? And it's guaranteed damage too, since it does half damage on a save. Anyways, our Halo of Spores damage has gone up to 2d6 now as well. I know, it's not much, but it's a little. And we've also added a d8 of damage per round from Elemental Fury. And we've gained more temporary hit points and more potential support and control. And maybe we even have a zombie friend sometimes. I'm not going to assume that we do. But if we take all of the damage now and average it over a 4-round combat encounter, against enemies with a 10 armor class, we would do 73 damage per round. And against a 16 AC, it would be 66 DPR. And that's a solid increase since last check, but hey, compared to other builds that I've done to date at this level, that's actually more like middle of the pack for tier 1. So they've slipped a couple of spots. Still tier 1, which is amazing. But again, it's not like you just add Conjure Minor Elementals and suddenly you're overpowered and destroying everything, right? We're burning a healthy amount of resources to get here. And once we get to 6th level spell slots and beyond, sure, Conjure Minor Elementals starts to get a little more problematic. But at that point, I mean, a 6th level spell slot, right? We're talking mass suggestion levels of power here. That's the comparison. Okay, I'm done. Let's move on. At level 10, we would be a Druid 8, and that means we get another feat. And if you went Shatterkai or Drow, and your campaign hasn't ended yet, sure, I'd love to cap Dexterity, but yeah, Elven Accuracy is the way to go, since it bumps our Dexterity for us by 1, and then says that when we have advantage on an attack made with Dexterity, Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma, then we can basically roll 3 d20s instead of 2 in our attempt to hit, and that is fantastic for our hit and crit chance. If you didn't go Elf, or you can't play with older content, then you can't play a Sports Druid, so why are you still watching? But also, sure, if you want to cap your Dexterity, that's great. Or go Mage Slayer, or maybe even grab Warcaster, since dropping concentration at this point especially would be pretty devastating for us, yeah? Alright, at level 11, we would be a Druid 9, and that means we get 5th level spells. Spores Druids get Cloud Kill and Contagion for free, nice. But beyond that, Awaken is fun if you can get that sentient tree to fight for you. Cone of Cold is solid multi-target damage. Greater Restoration feels like a must-have for support characters, and make no mistake, you could absolutely make a solid support here with this character while you are hacking and slashing. If you are okay sacrificing some of that damage especially. Maelstrom is nice AoE and control. Tree Stride is fun. Massive teleportation, right? Wall of Stone is good control. Yeah, have fun with it. At level 12, we would be a Druid 10, and that means as a Spores Druid, we get Spreading Spores, which says that we can use our bonus action, get this, to hurl our halo of spores up to 30 feet away from us. Dang, man. I mean, aside from symbiotic entity, which is potentially great, but maybe only if you multi-class, these poor spores druids got a lot of dud features, didn't they? Reminds me why I gave them a C rank in my druid subclass video right up there if you missed it. Some people were upset about that, but honestly, like, assuming that you go single class, which I am doing for these subclass tier ranking videos, right? They just struggle. At least Halo of Spores does 2d8 damage now, potentially. Yeah, let's move on. Ew. At level 13, we would be a Druid 11, and that means we get 6th level spells, and I mean, heal is incredible in combat heal if you really need a big one, right? Transport via plants is really fantastic world hopping utility, but Hero's Feast is probably the go-to here for an incredible party-wide buff if you've got the gold and the time for it. Okay, at level 13, it's time for the next damage report. Since last check, we've increased our hit and crit chance pretty substantially via Elven Accuracy, gotten a tiny bump to Halo of Spores, and of course picked up a 6th level spell slot to let Conjure Minor Elemental scaling start getting a little bit out of hand. It's 4d8 per hit now, potentially. It's a good thing we only make 3 attacks per turn, or things might really start to get crazy. Anyways, at this level, against an enemy with a 10 armor class, we would on average do 107 damage per round, and against a 17 AC, it would be 104 DPR. And yeah, okay, here we go. Broke 100 by level 13. We're feeling ourselves. Feeling decently tanky too, with 44 temporary hit points, and lots of heals, and potential buffs, and control, and utility. Looking good, Spores Druid. Despite all these crappy subclass features. As long as you can take a little fighter. Alright. Let's see what this all looks like in the end game, yeah? At level 14, we would be a Druid 12, and that means we get another feat, and, we need a dexterity-based half feat, right? You know what? I know, Mage Slayer, but honestly, I think I just might maybe prefer Defensive Duelist here. If you went Magic Initiate instead of Lucky, then never mind, you've got the shield spell, but otherwise, as much as I like having legendary resistance to mental saving throws once per short rest, that we get from Mage Slayer, I also really love the idea of Defensive Duelist, which would cap our dexterity at 20, and then would let us use our reaction to add our proficiency bonus to our armor class whenever we get hit with a melee attack specifically. And yeah, sure, it only works against melee attacks, and it only raises my AC for melee attacks, but it's basically a free shield in that scenario. No limit to how often I can use it, and most enemies in D&D are still making melee attacks these days. I don't know, I love it. I need to use this feat in a tank build, don't I? If you'd rather go Mage Slayer, or sure, Charger, or Sentinel, or Slasher, or Piercer, or whatever else, go for it. Just be sure to cap that dex at 20. At level 15, we would be a Druid 13, and that means we get 7th level spells, and while fools might be using that 7th level spell slot for Conjure Minor Elementals, the cool kids are using it to transform themselves into a dragon via Draconic Transformation, or, maybe better yet, to reverse gravity, so all of their enemies will fly helplessly into the air for like a whole combat encounter. So good. Yeah, bird agrees. At level 16, we would be a Druid 14, and as a Spores Druid, we get Fungal Body. And you know what? As Spores Druid features goes, that's pretty decent. It's their second best subclass feature even. We just straight up can't be blinded, deafened, frightened, or poisoned. Nice. And critical hits against us only count as regular hits unless we're incapacitated. That's a pretty nice suite of defensive features right there. And, for those of us who really want to hold on to temporary hit points, it's particularly good. Don't forget, we do get a final bump to Halo of Spores here. It goes up to 2d10 potentially. Finally for us though, at level 17, we would be a Druid 15, and that means we get improved Elemental Fury, which increases our damage from Elemental Fury to 2d8. It's still only once per turn, but, it's a bump. And then we get 8th level spells. And PYF here, pick your favorite, but Incendiary Cloud can be solid persistent AoE against multiple enemies, but Upcast Conjure Woodland Beings is almost as much damage and way easier to use, so, never mind about Incendiary Cloud. I would instead probably go with Tsunami here. When you need it, it's a pretty fantastic board wipe with damage. But this then brings us to our final damage report. Since last check, we have seen another small bump to Halo of Spores the gift that keeps on giving. Another D8 from Elemental Fury. We've capped our dexterity and gotten 8th level spell slots for more Conjure Minor Elementals shenanigans, potentially, as well as improved defense and potential utility and control. All of the things. We are a druid. But on average, here, against enemies with a 10 armor class, we would do 147 damage per round. And against an 18 AC, it would be slightly less, thank you, Elven Accuracy, 144 DPR. And, not surprisingly, compared to other DPR builds that I've done to date, we're back up near the top, though still getting beaten out by the heaviest hitters, the Bladesinger, the third-party, pugilist build that I did, and the no one is ever going to beat this build for damage Pyromaniac. Right up there. If you missed that, that thing's busted. But you know what? We are probably tankier than any of those guys, and we make a much better support character. So what does it all mean? Let's get into some final thoughts here in the end, yeah? The tier score for this build, if you take the damage that they do against every enemy armor class that I calculate for at each of the 4 damage reports and just average it into one big number, we end up with an 83.7, which puts them, right near the top of the heap in tier 1. But like I said, with our tankiness and support potential, is this mostly single class Spores Druid the most powerful character that I've ever built? The strongest Gish of them all? Maybe. Yeah, the birds agree, right? They love druids. It's no surprise, I suppose. You can definitely make the case, no doubt. It sort of depends, right? Like, would you rather be mostly a wizard in the case of the Bladesinger, or mostly a druid, as in this case? I think most people would argue wizards got the edge, considering the superior spell list, among other things. And yeah, Bladesingers get extra attack innately, the shield spell, better concentration checks, especially since it's easier for them as intelligence-based attackers to take Warcaster earlier, right? And a better armor class too, among other things. But they also have a D6 hit die, and man, by endgame, this druid was carrying a whopping 60 temporary hit points. Worse control, but better support. I would seriously love to take this build for a spin in-game, because it just might be freaking amazing. And no extra attack even. I think the biggest factor that will determine how good it feels in-game will be how reliably you can start a fight ready to go, yeah? If you have Action Surge available and are able to get Symbiotic Entity going reliably before combat starts, it will sing. If, on the other hand, you tend to have lots of combat encounters per short rest and are often getting into fights that you didn't see coming, the ramp-up time on this build is gonna feel frustrating. So, as always, talk things over with your DM, and if it's not going to work so great, maybe roll a different character, or be okay going for a different concentration spell, right? Throw out some control, or persistent heals, or conjure woodland beings. That'll do damage right on round 1, and potentially to every enemy on the battlefield. You don't need to be able to take the attack action, yeah? Between the versatility here, wild shaping for infiltration, healing when needed, and then just being a beefcake on the battlefield that can put out really, really great damage. Dang, yeah. I've been sleeping on the Spores Druid since 5.5 came out. They are incredible, as long as you're not allergic to fighter tips. So, that's the build for the week. I really hope you enjoyed it. I hope you get to play it sometime and can report back to me on how amazing, or maybe less than amazing, it ended up being. I love y'all. Thank you so much for all that you do for me and for the channel. It means so much to me. It really, really does. I hope you have a fantastic day and a really great week. And if you don't, please don't give up, okay? Hang in there. Believe. I believe in you. I do. I hope that you will do good and be kind, and that I see you again really soon. But until then, take care. Got my Ted Lasso shirt on. We made a pilgrimage out to Richmond, which is a real place for those who maybe don't live in England and didn't know. And it was actually really cool. And they have a Ted Lasso place there, and like the pub that they go to, and I went in and had some fish and chips, and it was fantastic. And sorry, no song. No outtake song today. There's no way I'm singing. In Faerun, mushroom. In Faerun, mushroom caps. um, 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 um,